I have got some binding to do. That makes it a great time to have received this winding ease tool to go with my binding ease tool from Quilted Heartz. This video is sponsored by Etsy. They gave me $50 to spend on anything I wanted. That's always fun because so many things to do. And this is one of those tools I've had my eye on, but I couldn't decide if I wanted to pull the trigger and spend the money. Spoiler alert, yes, should have done it a while ago, but the timing is perfect because again, I have these 3 big quilts that I need to quilt for Quilt Market in October. And when I did the math, I wanted to go back to bed. It's a lot. So one of them is 64 by 72. There's a 64 by 64 and a 69 by 69. When you do all the math for how much binding you need for them, it comes up to 840 inches. Or if I put the binding for all 3 of these end to end, 23 yards long. Ooh, totally overwhelming. So that is the perfect time to have the tools that make it go faster. So I'm going to show you how to use the winding ease that makes the binding ease even easier. I've had this and loved it for a while. Had my eye on this, so glad I have it now. So let me show you how this works. And it is going to make my job of making all that binding so much faster. But first, let's look at old school, simplest way to make binding. So you have your binding strips, 2.5 inches. And if you don't have any tools that help you make this any faster, you just do it by hand. So you fold it in half, you take your iron and you iron it, matching those raw edges, and then you move it and you iron some more. That is how you can do it without any of the tools. And if you don't do a lot of quilts or quilted projects that need binding, this is going to be your most economical way. But it does cost you one very important thing, which is your time. That is why I fell in love with this. This is the Binding Ease. It is from Quilted Heartz, as I mentioned, and it is a silicone mat. Now, one thing that's really important, if you watch many of my videos, you'll know that I normally use an Aliso, if I said that right, iron, where I never have to tip it up. It has little feet, and so when I let go of it, it stands up. However, mine does not have the ability to stay down, so I can't use it for this. I need an older school iron to do this process. Now what you do is you iron a few inches, and we'll just use the piece that I just demoed. You iron 10 to 12 inches in half, and then you tuck it under here and under here. So you're going to be stringing it through with your right hand or your left hand. So if you're left-handed, string it that way. If you're right-handed, string it that way, because you want your dominant hand to be in charge of making sure this is folding properly. You don't want it going like this. You want to make sure these raw edges are being fed in even so that they're together and they're not going to be off. So remember, dominant hand is the feeding hand. The other hand is the one that's just pulling it out after it is ironed. Now, I don't know if I'm the only one that has this problem, but this becomes quite hot because you can't do it super fast because you got to make sure it's working well. So I ended up grabbing this heat protective glove that I used for crafting, and I kind of feel like Michael Jackson of crafting so that my hand wouldn't be too hot. You may not have problems with that. I do. So it was way too hot. But now with the winding ease, I'm not going to need this. But first, let's just do a couple inches if you just had this product. So you take your iron, you have it on steam, and you set it down just in the middle. And then you just feed from the one side and you pull from the other side. Again, you're feeding from the side of your dominant hand because you're making sure that this fabric is lining up with the raw edges. And then you're pulling from this side. Your hand is also pretty close to the heat on this side, which is partly why I like this glove. You do need to lift it every once in a while. I think if I keep my iron down a certain amount of time, it thinks I've walked away. And for safety reasons, it'll turn off. So then I just flip it up and put it back down. So that was what I was doing. Now we're going to throw away the glove and we are going to use the winding ease. So let me show you how this works. This works like anything that you clamp on a table and you just undo it enough to go onto the end of your ironing board or your mat or whatever. I'm going to put it on the end of my workspace. So I'm just going to put that on there. This stays flat. And then I'm just going to twist this until it is tight. Now this you want on the side of your non-dominant hand because you want to be spinning with your non-dominant hand while you're feeding with your dominant hand, just like we did when we didn't have this. Then you want to take this colored piece off. We're going to put that back on in a second. And as I showed you before, this does have spindles. You can squeeze this end and you can pull this off. So if you buy multiples of these, you can store your binding right on that. I only have one for now, so I'll also show you how to take your binding off for storage if you only have one. You want to make sure your winder and where this is coming out are in a line. You don't want it to be going at an angle or this isn't going to wind well. So you need this coming straight. Okay, so you would do your start, you would put it through here, and then you would get it started on the winder ease. You're going to want your fabric up here. This is going to overlap. You want to make sure it's lined up well, and then you're going to put this clip on, and that is going to hold that binding in place as you get started. And then you're just going to do this as you're feeding it from the other side. So no more crazy glove, no more burnt hand. Your hand's not right next to the steam coming off the iron, and you are good to go. Let's get the rest of this binding pressed for the first quilt. So the most important part is to be watching over here where my right hand is to make sure that you're getting these raw edges together and that you are going to be creating even binding. Sometimes I feel like this is taking a little bit of time, and then I remember how long it takes to just have to fold it by hand and do each individual section, and also how much steam you end up with on your hands. Often melts my nail polish. We don't like that. So what do you think? Is this something you want to add, either one or both of these tools, to your quilting toolbox? If you do a bit of quilting or quilted projects, I think it's definitely worth the investment. Neither of these are consumables, meaning they're not going to wear out. It's pretty much a one-time purchase. You buy them, you use them, you save time, and you love them. But at the same time, it is not an inexpensive investment, so you need to decide if, when, and how you're going to have the budget. Now, if you don't have a bunch of these holders, I only have one and I have 3 rolls of this to do. What you can do is you can just roll it off, just like you would if you were doing your regular binding. Just kind of loosely roll it, and you'll be making your binding strip without the holder. So this is an extra step because I don't have any additional spools. But the whole process has really saved a lot of time, kept more steam away from me, and I am beyond thrilled to have both of these things in my arsenal. So I would say hats off to Sarah Adams for coming up with this and sharing it with the rest of us. Thank you, thank you. I wonder what she will be coming up with next. And then when you get to the end, you're just going to take that clip off, and then you'll have the rest of the binding. So now I have that one ready to go for my first quilt. Now I have my binding done for one of my 3 quilts, and while I didn't make you watch it in real time, I did check the video, and it took me 6 minutes to press it, and that included making sure I was talking and explaining what I was doing. So I could have done it in 5 if I was just listening to music or something, and a minute or 2 to roll it up. So definitely a huge time saver. I am very excited to have the winding ease to help with the binding ease. I wonder if she's going to make us any more ease. So if you're interested in adding the binding ease or the winding ease to your arsenal, you can find them on her website at quiltingheartz.com. A lot of stores on Etsy sell them. Many quilt shops, either in person or online, sell them as well. I have also put a link where you can find them on Amazon in the video description, if none of those other options work for you. My name is Tara Reed. I am an artist and a fabric designer with Riley Blake Designs, and I love to teach easy sewing projects, things to sew and sell, quilting, and more on my blog and on my YouTube channel. If you could give me a thumbs up and or a comment on this video, that would help me a lot. Lets YouTube know that you liked it, and then maybe they will show it to some other people. Also, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell so that YouTube notifies you when I post new videos. Have a great day, happy quilting, and happy sewing.